I work part-time as a delivery driver for a popular food delivery app. It's nothing fancy. It's just enough to help pay for my rent and classes. Most nights are pretty uneventful. Long stretches of driving, dropping off bags at doors, and maybe a few awkward encounters when a customer actually wants to talk. Nothing I couldn't handle. It was late fall when this happened. Chilly, dry air, streets covered in fallen leaves, and darkness that feels thicker and heavier after daylight saving time ends. I had been driving for about 5 hours and decided to do 1 or 2 more deliveries before calling it a night. Around 10:45 p.m., a new order popped up on my phone. Simple: a burger, fries, and a shake from a 24-hour diner downtown. The address wasn't far, only about 15 minutes from where I was. I accepted it without a second thought. The customer's name on the order was Samuel D. Nothing unusual about that. The address pointed to a suburban street lined with old colonial-style houses. I'd been around that area a few times. The house itself looked normal enough. It has 2 stories, a brick exterior, and a porch light flickering slightly. One car in the driveway was a silver sedan that had seen better days. A little rundown, maybe, but nothing that screamed danger. I texted the customer that I was pulling up. No response. It's not unusual either. Sometimes people were busy. Sometimes they just didn't care. I grabbed the paper bag and a shake, walked up the front steps, and rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, the door swung open, and a man stood there. Mid-40s, thin, slightly hunched. His skin was pale, almost grayish under the porch light. He had messy dark hair and bags under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in a week. Still, he smiled, a tight, strained smile, and thanked me. His voice was low but polite. I handed him the food. He took it with both hands, nodding, and mumbled something like, "Been a long day." I gave the usual, "Have a good night," turned around, and left. Standard interaction. I thought nothing of it. I started heading back toward the main road, thinking maybe I could squeeze in one last order before midnight. About 10 minutes later, just as I passed a gas station, another ping came in. New order. I glanced at the screen. Same diner, same items. Burger, fries, shake. Same name, Samuel D. Weird coincidence. But when I checked the address, it was the same house, exactly the same. At first, I thought maybe it was a glitch. Sometimes the app would mess up, double send an order or something. But the order timestamp was new. 11:02 p.m. Maybe the guy was drunk. Maybe he dropped his food and needed a replacement. Whatever. I accepted the order. After all, it was close. Easy money. I picked up the second bag at the diner. The cashier gave me a weird look but didn't say anything. When I pulled back up to the house, the porch light was off. The only light now came from a small lamp in one of the upstairs windows. It was colder, the kind of cold that bites even through a jacket. The neighborhood was dead silent. No wind, no rustling leaves. Just my footsteps on the cracked driveway. I rang the bell again. Nothing. I waited. No footsteps. No sounds from inside. I knocked this time. Still nothing. Maybe he fell asleep. Just as I was about to leave the bag on the doorstep and bail, the door creaked open. But this time, it wasn't the same. The man stood there again, but different. His smile was gone. He looked hollow. His eyes were wrong, wide, glassy, staring past me rather than at me. In that same low voice, he said, "I didn't order anything." I hesitated. "This is the address listed," I said, trying to keep it professional. "You're Samuel, right?" He just stared at me for a long moment. Too long. Then he smiled again. But it wasn't like before. It was wrong. It was like a bad actor trying to fake being friendly. "No," he said, and shut the door. I stood there for a second, dumbfounded, bag in hand, heart thudding harder than it should have. Something about the whole thing was gnawing at my gut. Still not wanting trouble, I placed the bag on the doormat, took a quick photo for proof of delivery, and got the hell out of there. Driving home the whole way back, I couldn't shake the feeling. The way he looked at me. The way the house seemed darker somehow. The silence. It wasn't just weird, it was wrong. The next day, I tried to forget about it. I went to class, went to work, and did everything normally. Around lunchtime, I got a text from Kyle, a buddy of mine who also did deliveries part-time. It was a screenshot of a news article. Local man found dead in suburban home. Estimated time of death, 2 to 3 days earlier. I froze. The address listed was the same one from the night before. The photo in the article shows the man. It was him. Same messy hair, same pale face. Except, if he had been dead for days, then who the hell opened the door to me? I didn't know what to do. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't call the cops. What would I even say? That I delivered a burger and fries to a dead man? No one would believe it. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe someone else lived there. Maybe a relative who looked eerily similar. But no. The article mentioned that he lived alone. No family, no roommates. The coroner estimated he'd been dead since Sunday night. Almost 3 days before, I delivered food to that house. A few nights later, unable to sleep, I returned to the app's delivery history. I found the first order to that address. Order completed at 10:55 p.m. And then the second one. Accepted at 11:02 p.m. Completed at 11:18 p.m. My delivery photo was still there. The upstairs window barely lights the brown paper bag on the doormat. But I noticed something I hadn't before when I tapped to enlarge the photo. There, standing behind the window on the second floor, half hidden by the curtain, was a figure. Watching. I stared at it for a long time. Maybe it was just a trick of the light. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew. Someone, or something, was in that house. Something that answered the door. Something that smiled with a mouth that didn't know how to smile correctly. For weeks after, whenever I pulled up to a new delivery at night, my heart would hammer against my ribs. I couldn't stop picturing that hollow face, that cold stare. It made me rethink doing night shifts altogether. Eventually, I stopped delivering food altogether. Got a different part-time job that didn't involve strangers' homes or dark doorsteps. But I still wonder sometimes. When people die, do they always stay dead? Or do some of them not realize it right away? Still walking, still answering doors, still ordering dinner. Even now, sometimes late at night, when I drive past empty houses, I swear. Sometimes I see a porch light flicker on by itself, and a shadow moving behind the curtains, waiting for the next delivery. Last September, just before the cold started creeping into Minnesota, my best friend Carter and I decided to spend a long weekend at his uncle's lake house. The place was tucked deep in the woods near a spot called Willow Lake. Carter's uncle used it maybe once a year, so most of the time it sat empty, collecting dust. We were both 21, broke from school, and desperate for a cheap getaway before real life kicked in again. Free lake house, no neighbors, beer and fishing. It sounded perfect. Carter picked me up Friday afternoon, and we drove out of the city, winding through endless forests. By the time we pulled up to the house, the sun was hanging low and gold over the water. It was beautiful. Huge deck overlooking the lake, 2 floors, and thick pines surrounding the property like a wall. Total isolation. As we got to the house, The only weird thing we noticed was the old porch light. It kept flickering. On, off, on again, like it couldn't decide. No notes, no warnings, just that broken light buzzing quietly above the door. Carter laughed and said the place looked like it was trying to prank us. We shrugged it off, carried our bags inside, and figured it was just bad wiring. We had no idea how wrong we were. The first night was everything we wanted. Grilling on the deck, cold beers, trash talking over card games. By midnight, the lake was glassy and black, only the moon giving us any real light. We dragged a couple of chairs down to the small dock at the yard's edge, letting our feet dangle above the water. We sat there for a while, just listening to the silence. That's when we noticed it, a light across the lake. At first it was faint, almost easy to miss, like a small flashlight bobbing up and down. Carter thought it was someone fishing, maybe heading back to their cabin. But the way the light moved, it was strange. It wasn't steady. It blinked. Short flashes, then long flashes, then short again. Carter, half drunk, joked that it was Morse code. But after watching it for a minute, I realized it wasn't a joke. The flashes had a clear pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. It's the SOS code. I felt my skin prickle. Maybe it was just a prank. Maybe some drunk teenager screwing around across the lake? But what if it wasn't? Carter stood up, peering across the black water. Dude, we should check it out. I hesitated. The idea of paddling across the lake at night to some random light sounded like a bad horror movie setup. But Carter was already dragging the old aluminum canoe from under the porch. I didn't want to be a coward, so I grabbed a paddle and followed. We pushed off into the water, the canoe rocking under our weight. It was colder out there than expected, and the night swallowed us fast. The only sounds were the soft splash of our paddles and the occasional creak of the old boat. The closer we got, the clearer the light became. It wasn't moving anymore. It was waiting. About halfway across the lake, Carter stopped paddling. "Look," he whispered. I turned and saw something that made my stomach twist. The light wasn't coming from a person. It was coming from a window. A single upstairs window in a house tucked back in the woods, almost invisible from the lake. The window was open just a crack, and the light inside blinked steadily. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. We hadn't seen that house during the day. We hadn't seen any houses across the lake at all. I wanted to turn around right then and there. But Carter was already paddling toward the narrow, broken dock, jutting out from the shore. Reluctantly, I followed. We tied the canoe loosely to a tree and crept up the hill toward the house. It was massive up close. Old wood siding, shutters hanging at weird angles, a porch sagging under its own weight. There were no lights on inside except for that blinking one upstairs. We moved toward the front door, Carter leading the way. He tried the handle, unlocked. The door swung open with a groan that made my skin crawl. Inside, the air was thick and cold, like the whole place had been sealed up for years. Dust floated in the beam of Carter's flashlight. The furniture was old, but intact. An ancient-looking rug stretched across the floor. Framed photos on the walls, too dark to make out. Everything felt wrong. Still, we pressed on, toward the stairs, toward the blinking light. Each step up the staircase groaned painfully. I kept looking over my shoulder, convinced we weren't alone. At the top, the hallway stretched out in both directions. The blinking light was coming from the last door on the right. Carter led the way. He turned the knob slowly. The door creaked open. The room was empty except for an old desk pressed against the window. On the desk was a battered lantern, flickering mechanically with the same SOS pattern. There was no one inside. I was about to suggest we get the hell out of there when Carter hissed at me to look. On the floor, under the window, there were muddy footprints. Small ones, child-sized. They led from the window across the room and disappeared into a dark hallway opposite us. Carter took a step forward, flashlight shaking slightly. Something clattered in the dark. We froze. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was a boy. Or at least, it looked like a boy. His clothes were torn and dirty, his skin pale and waxy. His eyes were empty. Hollow, he lifted one trembling hand and pointed behind us. We turned just in time to hear the front door slam shut with a deafening crack. The flashlight flickered. In the brief flash of light, I saw movement. Figures. Multiple. Emerging from the shadows at the edges of the room. They were silent. I grabbed Carter's arm and yanked him back down the hall. We sprinted to the stairs, stumbling over each other. The house came alive with noise, footsteps pounding, doors slamming, something whispering just out of earshot. We hit the front door at full speed. Locked. Somehow, it had locked itself. Carter threw his shoulder into it, but it barely budged. The footsteps were getting closer. I spotted a window by the kitchen and didn't hesitate. I threw a chair through it, spraying shards of glass into the night. We climbed through, cutting ourselves on the broken frame, and hit the ground running. Back toward the canoe, toward the safety of the water. We pushed off so fast that we nearly tipped the boat. As we paddled away, panting and bleeding, I looked back over my shoulder. The house was dark now. No blinking light. No movement, just a dead, empty silhouette against the night sky. We didn't speak until we were halfway back across the lake. When we finally pulled the canoe onto Carter's uncle's dock, we ran inside, locked the doors, and didn't sleep until the sun came up. The next morning, we decided to leave early. We didn't even pack properly, just threw our stuff into the car and peeled out. On the way out of town, I stopped Carter at the small bait shop by the main road. I wanted to ask about the house across the lake. The old man behind the counter frowned when I described it. "That place," he said. "Been empty since the fire, about 15 years ago. The whole family died. The house is condemned." He shook his head like he didn't want to say more. Carter and I didn't ask any more questions. We drove the rest of the way home in silence. The blinking light still burned into the backs of our minds. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when I close my eyes, I still see that window. Still see the boy pointing. Still hear the whisper behind me, too soft to understand. Still wondering what would have happened if we hadn't run. Before we dive into the next story, if you're here for the first time, please consider subscribing to our channel and clicking the bell icon so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. Your support truly encourages us and helps this channel continue to grow. And don't forget to share these stories with your friends and family. Thank you.